And looking at your CV, Julie, you're from California, went to Berkeley, but the phrase that jumps out at me is this: arrested, age 9. What's that about?
Well, I get asked about that often. So when I was 9 years old, we were out in front of a supermarket helping to inform consumers about the dangers of pesticides that were at that time being sprayed on table grapes. And
Mhm.
the store owners didn't think that that was appropriate. And they felt instead it was appropriate to arrest a 9-year-old.
So let me ask: is there a mugshot that exists of you, age 9?
I don't think so. I don't believe
Ah,
that there is a mugshot of
disappointing.
age 9. I know.
Hello and welcome to day 43 of Trump 100. I'm James Matthews. For today's episode, Mark and Martha, they're taking a breather following an extraordinary week. But I'm delighted to say I'm joined by a special guest, Julie Chavez Rodriguez. Hi, Julie.
Hi, James. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Yeah, quieter, I suppose, than you were in recent months. You were, of course, the campaign manager for Joe Biden, then Kamala Harris. You have worked in the White House for Barack Obama. So it's been a busy old time.
Definitely. As I had a chance to just reflect on the last, 15 years that I've been in politics, it really was remarkable kind of the work we were able to get done, but also, the pace that we had to work to ensure that we were really meeting the needs of the American people and doing what we could to serve them.
You're a woman with politics in her blood. You're the granddaughter of Cesar Chavez, who was the leader of the United Farm Workers Union, celebrated figure in US politics. So you were pretty much born into it.
It's really in my blood. Growing up in the farm worker movement, as we called it, and being able to see my grandfather, but also my parents, farm workers across the country, really being able to stand up and to be able to advocate for their own rights, advocate for better wages and working conditions, and just having a front row seat to that was really remarkable and showed me the power of organizing. It showed me the power of people coming together collectively to be able to improve their lives. It also showed me the power of leadership and what real leadership looks like.
You were campaign manager for Joe Biden's reelection whilst he was still a candidate, and there was optimism for a long time. Just take me back to, let's go back 12 months. Julie, what was the state of the campaign? Tell me about Joe Biden, yourself, how you interacted. What was the talk inside the campaign?
Well, we were very excited. We were very optimistic. What we were continuing to see was a kind of energy and enthusiasm, really having, I think, a profound impact and seeing that kind of sense of excitement, hope, optimism, the building blocks of what you hope to see as you're going into the summer months, as you're gearing up for the next phase of the campaign and going into our Democratic convention. And the president was also hopeful.
A defining moment was the TV debate with Donald Trump in Atlanta last June. There was, of course, that moment where President Biden lost the thread. Some would say that was the moment that crippled the campaign. I just wonder what was in your mind as you saw that unfold.
As I thought, he had a bad debate night. And I think, what we saw ensue from, later that evening and then the days beyond, I think were just blatantly overblown. The president came out of the debate that night. He went to one of the debate watch parties and riled up a crowd of really rowdy supporters at 1 a.m. in the morning. And then got up the next day and did it all over again and again and again and again. That was my experience with the president, kind of before the debate, but also following the debate. I think, again, a lot of energy, a lot of momentum, and a lot of force.
Did that moment did it expose the mental frailty about which there was much discussion?
No, I think that, again, this was, a moment where the president had been in preparation for several days, dealing with a lot of different kind of facts and figures and issues, and got a little tongue tied in the moment.
There were questions, not just on that night, Julie, but over the course of many months, questions that remain today about Joe Biden's mental acuity and fitness for office. Just talk to me about being with him and and your view of a man who, after all, was advanced in years. Did you notice a difference between the Joe Biden you dealt with when you were on your first day in the door and the Joe Biden that was running for re-election?
No, not at all. And I would say that, President Biden ran circles around all of us as his staff. And, he worked extremely long hours. He continued, as I mentioned, to really also hone in on the details and to make sure that he was the most prepared that he needed to be going into whatever situation it was. He understood the gravity of his role, of his leadership and of what it meant to be, the leader of the free world. And that was true from day one in office until I had the opportunity to see him last shortly before leaving office.
There were gaffes, weren't there? He introduced President Zelensky as Putin. We saw him fall asleep at COP26. There were reports that meetings were rescheduled for the president to accommodate good days and bad days, meetings scheduled for later in the day. What do you say to those reports that appear to come from credible sources inside the Biden White House?
I never witnessed any of that. I never experienced any of that. I was a senior advisor to the president for 2.5 years, and that was never the case.
And the gaffes, Julie?
I'd say, I mean, the gas he, has throughout his political career, I would say, committed gaffes from, during the Obama days, and even before then. And so I think it's, something it's a little bit of, more of a character trait than something that I would attribute to age or anything else.
Mhm. There came the point where the Democratic Party at large wanted a change, and there were machinations to that end. Talk to me about your experience of that, Julie. We heard from Nancy Pelosi, George Clooney entered the debate, and there were people who wanted Joe Biden to step down. Just tell me your experience of all that.
Well, my experience was that this was a choice that the president should and would make, and that it was a choice that he should have been able to make in the privacy of his conversations and in his own right, and not with the unnecessary and what I would characterize as a bit egregious outside chorus.
Kamala Harris became the candidate in time. Tell me about that. She gave the campaign a big push at that time, and she appeared to have an energy that maybe had been lacking. But certainly, it was a there was a bounce for the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I think, she is an extremely electric candidate. And I will say that I am so proud that she was also a flawless candidate, as we saw throughout her 107-day campaign. As she jumped in, I think she did. She did energize a lot of parts of our base, especially young voters, women voters, voters of color. And that was a really important injection.
The mantra that I heard Kamala Harris repeat several times was, "I know Donald Trump's type." Ultimately, why didn't that quite work? I mean, you were up against a candidate who had a criminal record.
I think many voters were really feeling the economic pinch. That's what we had continued to hear from them, that they were concerned about what they had seen as the rising cost of prices and wanted to make sure that they were, taking those issues on. I think we can all be clear and honest right now that Donald Trump has done nothing to bring down inflation. He has done nothing to address the economic challenges that folks are feeling, and they weren't necessarily focused as much on Trump's record. And instead, what I think we're seeing now is a lack of focus on any of the economic issues, and instead an implementation of Project 2025 in ways that we were trying to warn folks. I think it's important that we remind them that that is exactly what's happening right now.
Should Joe Biden have stepped down sooner as a candidate, allowing Kamala Harris more time to establish herself and her credentials? Did he leave it too late?
When the president stepped down, we were in a position quickly as a campaign to pivot and ensure that with those 107 days, we did everything that we could to build a strong, robust campaign for Vice President Kamala Harris.
Mm,
And as we know now, it wasn't enough. And at the end of the day, when you look at the numbers, this was not a mandate for Donald Trump. He did not win overwhelmingly in the battleground states. This was a narrow election. We built our campaign understanding it was going to be a close election, and we knew it would break one way or the other towards the end. And it
mm.
didn't break in our favor. And there's obviously important work we're going to continue to do to make sure it does moving forward.
Few people in this country know political strategy like you do. From a strategy point of view, can I ask you again, do you think Joe Biden should have stepped down earlier? And would that have given you strategically an advantage that ultimately you didn't have?
No, Joe Biden chose to step down when Joe Biden chose to step down.
Should he have done it earlier?
It was Joe Biden's choice.
Should he have done it earlier? Last time.
It was his choice.
Okay, Julie. All right. When you look out at potential candidates to lead the Democratic Party, I wonder, I wonder who your pick would be today. There's Gavin Newsom, Josh Shapiro. Who do you think is likely right now?
Well, I think we have a tremendous bench, and that's the exciting part. You mentioned a couple of governors. We also have Governor Gretchen Whitmer. There's Governor J.B. Pritzker. There are many, governors. I think we also have, some ongoing rising stars throughout our congressional representatives, and really continuing to make sure that they are all stepping into new leadership roles because that's what's important right now. It's not important that we, just focus on the presidential election. I feel like at times as Democrats, we maybe have been a little too focused on just the top of the ticket, but we know we have to elect Democrats up and down the ballot and at every turn and making sure that, we're doing that in a way that's smart and that's really building the capacity we're going to need for 2028.
Yeah, right now, as we see the Trump administration kick into gear, there is much talk about pushback and questions about, where are the Democrats in all of this? Where is protest? I just wonder what your take is on where we are right now in terms of all of that, because so much is going on, so much is coming out of the White House, and there are others who are saying we're not hearing enough from opponents.
I think that's a little bit of this White House's strategy, right? They want to try to overwhelm and exhaust with the amount of things that they're doing right now, and what I would say is, some of it is blatantly against the law. And so, fortunately, we have seen Democrats really go to bat in the courts and have taken this administration to task. They have received a number of rulings that have, sort of enabled or gone against their firing of federal workers for no apparent reason. The judge ruled against him and in freezing funds from so many federal programs as they tried to do. So those are some important initial victories. But we've also seen, I think, some new efforts now that House Republicans have put forward a horrific budget bill that cuts, again, so many of the critical safety net programs. We see Democrats in Congress now really making sure that they're going after them and reminding voters what these cuts represent. We also see congressional Republicans as they're going home to their own town halls, getting booed, getting told to do their job because they too need to stand up and make sure that they're delivering for their constituents. Because if they're not, they're going to get voted out as well. So those are the kinds of efforts that we're continuing to see at every level, and it's only going to continue. It's only going to grow.
Julie, do you think the Democratic Party would have won the election if Joe Biden had remained as the candidate?
I'm not going to sort of hypothesize at this stage. I think that we, again, were able to mount a really strong campaign. We saw Vice President Harris's approval ratings bump 10 percentage points out the gate. We know that we had a neck and neck race up until the end. And there was, we put everything on the field. And for that, I am really proud of our team and proud of our candidate. And we know that it wasn't enough. And so there's more work to do as we continue to build in these next few years.
It's been really nice talking to you. Julie, tell me what's next for you? Or are you still engaged in the political game? Or
Yes, definitely. Well, it's been great talking to you too, James. I am still staying in the fight and working with several partners that I had worked with on the campaign to make sure we're mobilizing our community. I feel particularly passionate about the Latino community, but we know that we need to get out and make sure that we're speaking to our voters and letting them know that, again, what we're seeing right now is not conservatism, it's corruption, and that Donald Trump only cares about himself. He doesn't care about the American people, and that's the work that we're going to continue to do.
okay, Julie Chavez Rodriguez, many thanks. It's been our pleasure to have you with us today on Trump 100. That's it for this episode. As always, please do remember to follow the podcast wherever you're listening. And remember, you can email us on trump100@sky.uk. We'll be doing another question and answer episode at the end of the week, so please do get your questions in for that. Thanks very much for listening to day 43 of Trump 100. We'll be back again tomorrow for day 44. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.